Once you have completed your 2-point perspective project, you're going to begin painting your clay nameplate. You will find that on the drying rack in which you place them. They should be organized by class period, but they may have been mixed up a little bit after taking out of the kiln. So make sure that you search each shelf before asking where your project might be. You will notice that on the back counter, we already have paint and all of your supplies put on trays, very similar to how we did before with our other project where we used acrylic paint for our color wheel. Since we are no longer working on using just primaries, we have a variety of extra colors that you did not have before. You will have an extra red, which is a cool red, and you'll have an extra blue, which is a cool blue. We also have gold and we have silver that we can use for our nameplates as well. Having these extra colors is nice because it gives us better variety. We can create more colors using them. For example, if I were wanting to create more of like a teal blue or a teal green, I would want to use cool blue and regular green with a little bit of white. Using cool blue creates a lighter blue color, and cool blue leans more towards those greens on the color wheel. Warm blue has more red in it. It leans more towards the purples and red colors. And because it has red and green are complements, they mix together and they will create a much darker color, more like a navy. Same thing goes with our cool reds and our warm red. Cool red's going to give you a darker orange, more like a burnt orange, and warm red, if mixing them together, it's going to give you a brighter color. You also have that silver and gold, and some students sometimes will mix it with their regular paint. It'll give it a shiny effect, kind of like a pearl-like color. So we have a little bit, again, more to work with on our plates as we get started. Your tray for your table is set up very similar to before, except for we've got a lot more colors. We have popsicle sticks again, and that popsicle stick is just for this color. Please do not mix these. Don't be lazy. Use a brush and make sure that you're washing it out and you're applying this to your palette. Every day, each student gets a paper plate, and from that paper plate, this is where we will mix our colors. When we're looking at your brushes, again, there's 2 sets of brushes for every table, and there's a variety of them, keeping in mind the shape and using it correctly for your clay nameplate. Our goal of our project is to fill in our clay nameplate and think about colors that work well. We've already sketched out some colors. We've planned them before we even got started building. So you may continue on with these colors, or maybe you would like to change them. That's fine. Keep in mind that this is not something that is flat. It's a 3-dimensional surface. So the sides and painting them are going to be just as important, and making sure that we get paint into all of these different surfaces and textures so that it has a nice finished look. When you pick up your clay nameplate from the shelf, you're going to notice again that the color has changed. Right? When I look at it, it's now bright white. All of the water has been taken out by the kiln, heating it up to a few thousand degrees. What also you will notice is that since it's been removed, it's taken all of those water particles out, and now the clay particles have formed together to create something that is like glass. If I drop this, it will break, just like a glass mug or a glass plate will. So you want to be really careful when you're placing it onto your table so that you don't break it. When I start painting, it's a good idea to put something underneath of it so that there's an easier cleanup when we get to the end of class, especially since you're painting edges. So if you're painting the background, which we will do first, I would suggest putting a piece of paper towel or newspaper underneath of it. So again, we don't have a lot of table cleaning at the end of class. When you're using acrylic paint, we know that it dries like a hard plastic, and this is really porous and it has no water in it. So the first thing that happens when you put a layer of paint on is that first layer absorbs into the background really quickly, and we will have to go back and do multiple layers. Because you're starting to work with something that has a really uneven surface, regular brush strokes back and forth may not work. We may have to get creative with how we place our paint onto our project. I may have to scrub some to push that into all of the little pores that are on our nameplate. And I also want to make sure that if I paint this, I paint the sides as well. So first step is going to be getting that color kind of scrubbed in here where I would like it. I'm always going to start with my background first, because when I'm getting up close to my letters, I sometimes get a little bit of paint on there, okay? So let's say, for example, I'm painting my background and like, oops, I got that on my letter, all right? It's not a huge deal. If I can take a paper towel and wipe it off, this is the best time to do it, to remove some of it. And then I'm going to let that dry, all right? So I want to let that paint dry, and I can go over top of it later. On my finished piece, I've got an example. So let's say this was an area where I got some paint that I didn't want, and it's a really dark color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush with a little bit of white paint, and I'm going to paint over top of the area. Think of it kind of like whiteout, the white paint. And then I'll let that dry, and I'll be able to come back over top of it later with my orange and cover it up, because I accidentally got gray on here. Now putting orange over top of it, it's really light, that color. It's not going to cover up that spot. So again, think of it kind of like whiteout. I'm going to brush over top of it, let that dry, and then I can come back with my orange and touch that up. It's important when you're painting, again, to make sure that you turn it to the side. If we find areas where there are white spaces, I'm going to do my best with my brush to get my paint into there, to those spots, and fill those in. If you have a piece that has bricks in it, it's much easier to take our brush and paint in those seams first. And again, finding a brush that fits, and to paint in those bricks first. Then I can come back later over top of it, and I can put my outside color on there. Think about the texture that it has. Sometimes I can take my paint and I can just drag it across the texture so that underneath color still shows, but the texture now is kind of highlighted. I kind of like that with the silver. Once I get to my letters, if I decide that I want to do dark to light, if I want there to be a transition, again, I'm going to start with my lighter colors first. So I think with this, I'm going to make my letters blue. So I'm going to paint a little bit of white paint onto it. And then I'm going to bring some of that cool blue over, so it's the color that I want to use. Again, making sure that we use a popsicle stick. To bring our color over to our plate. And then I'm going to blend that darker blue into the white paint that I just applied. And I'm going to blend it. So I'm applying white paint and blue paint, and I'm bringing those brush strokes across. And I wanted to have a little bit of a value change. Now you can do this several ways. I'm using brush strokes that go up and down, and I'm going back and taking touches of this color and adding it a little bit of a time so that I get a gradient effect, just like the way that looks. You could also do stippling, meaning take my brush and dot it across, and I can blend colors that way as well. And this is how we will begin working on our graffiti nameplates to complete it. Again, once we have these done, we'll turn them in for grading, and they'll be able to go home pretty soon. And again, our goal is to have really nice, even coverage, colors that contrast, that stand out next to one to another, painted colors all the way around, because again, this is 3D. I'm not looking so much at the back, but this will be seen from the sides, the top, and the bottom.